All right, welcome to the Balloween stream. I hope you guys are doing well. Let's go ahead and kick it off by show me where you're tuning in from. I have the screen right in front of me. I can see the chat. It's sort of flying right now, but I want to see where people are coming in from. I'm out on the East Coast of the U.S. where it is storming like mad, which feels very apropos for a Balloween stream. Oh my gosh, this chat is soaring. All right, let's see: Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Arkansas, Texas, California, Finland, Philippines, Morristown, Texas, Poland, France. My goodness. Quincy, Mass. I saw somebody from Quincy, Mass. That's my hometown. Shout out Quincy. Wow, we are really an international community. That's pretty cool. Before the stream started, I'm a little out of focus. Yeah, I keep shifting back and forth. Is that going to matter? Making sure I'm dialed in. Sweet. I'm probably going to move again. So. I think you're. Okay. Cool. Before this started, the team and I were just talking about how it's so interesting that there are so many people from around the world that are fans of the strange, dark, and mysterious, in the sense that, you know, we come to the studio, we film our YouTube videos and our podcasts, and we do all this stuff, and then we upload it to the internet. And even though I am definitely, logically aware that people all over the world are getting it, it's always sort of mind-blowing, especially like in live streams and then certainly during live in-person events, to just see that it's not just going into the ether, the content. It's going all over the world. People are just, fans of the strange, dark, and mysterious, which is really cool. But anyways, it's now been 2 minutes. We're gonna probably chat for a couple more minutes before we get into the meat and potatoes of this live stream. I got a really good story to tell, so stick around for that. But before we sort of dive into the run of show and all that, I just wanna say thank you all so much for ordering the new graphic novel. Here it is, Where Nightmares Live. Our newest graphic novel. So the way it worked, for those of you that don't necessarily know this, is we had an incentive for you all. If there was a certain number of pre-orders on this book, and we filled the gauge up enough, and actually when we throw it, there it is, boom. You see, we actually went above 100%. We were above 100%. And so because we filled it up, here I am doing a sort of thank you live stream here. But so yeah, thank you. You guys are great. You bought up the book. Very cool. I'm honestly quite proud of this. It was a labor of love. I definitely did not do it alone. We have incredible people that are involved in putting these books together. We have Rob Vendetti, who is our primary writer, who basically converts the scripts that I will author with my team and puts it into sort of like graphic novel form. There's nuance to it. And then we have our artist, here, let's go to the overhead view if you would, James. Our artist, here we go, Andrea Muti. He's a world-renowned comic book artist. You see this here, look at that beautiful art. And then actually my sister, Evan Allen, she's like the head creative at Ballin Studios, basically. She's the head of writing and publishing. She's brilliant. She played a massive role in putting these graphic novels together. This is an enormous amount of work. There's loads more people beyond that. Thank you to our publisher, Penguin Random House, to 10 Speed Press, our imprint, the whole crew at Ballin Studios. This is really, a lot of people go into it. We're very proud of it. So yeah, we'll talk more about the book as we go. But again, thank you for all the pre-orders, pre-sales. It's why we're doing this Balloween stream. Nobody asked this question, but I'm sure you're thinking it. What's it like to work with your sister at Ballin Studios, making strange, dark, and mysterious content? I gotta say, it's great. It really is. She is absolutely brilliant. She hates when I do this, but she is a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. She was at the Boston Globe where she reported, she was an investigative journalist reporting on crime primarily. And she actually, while she was doing her full-time reporting at the Boston Globe, this is years ago, she was like moonlighting and helping me write, along with my mother, who also works at Balloween Studios, Jessie Thuma. Love you, Mom. I know you're listening in the car somewhere out in California, I think. But Evan, she was basically doing this on the side for free, just literally writing, because she's an amazing writer. It just worked out beautifully. She continued to write really well, and I poached her from the Boston Globe, and now she is really the lifeblood in the creative side of the company. She's really in charge of the writer's room. She's instrumental. So I love working with Evan and my mom and the whole gang. It's great. So anyway, how is today gonna go? How is this stream gonna go? Well, let me just say, before we get into the story and a couple other things, I do have a really cool announcement I'm gonna make at the end of the live stream. I'm gonna make you wait until the end of the live stream, or you're gonna have to wait until it ends and we post it, and then you can fast forward to the end of the live stream and you can watch it that way. But we have a really cool promotion we're doing that's actually gonna span the entire country, okay, over the next 2 weeks. And it's gonna start tomorrow. We put a lot of thought into this. My right-hand man, Antonio, who I'm sure many of you have come across if you've been to any of the live events. He's the really intense former police officer who's sort of like my head of security, right-hand man. He actually sits in the studio with me when I film all my videos and content. He had this great idea of how we could not just promote the book, but sort of make it a really fun game for all of us to play, okay? And so the way it's gonna work is I'm gonna tell you about the game at the end of the stream, but the first thing, because I can't give away too much, is gonna happen tomorrow, but you gotta know what it is and you gotta know where to look, okay? It's gonna be really good. Let's see, anything else I missed before we get into this? Okay, it is 1:07, I think that's pretty good. Pretty good to get into this thing. So, in the spirit of Halloween, or Balloween, as we're celebrating today, I wanted to choose a story that sort of fit the vibe of Halloween. And I think I got a really good one. This story, it is one that's been covered before, but I promise you it's an oldie. And I went back and I was looking at the script and I was reading some of the notes that I had with the person who is involved in the actual story, because we spoke to this person. And it's just funny looking at the evolution of how I would have approached this story. Back in 2020 when it was first uploaded, just sloppy. And so hopefully this live rendition is sort of a better representation of the story. But I think this one it's quite spooky. It's from one person's point of view who experienced this firsthand. It's quite good. So I'm not even gonna say the name of the story. We're just gonna get into the story. But again, stick around at the end of the story. Also, we're gonna do some Q&A at the end. After the story, we'll do Q&A. We'll do our cool game announcement. Okay, there's some stuff coming at the end, but you gotta wait till the end. So here we go, story time. All right, in 2010, there was this guy named Nate Smith, who was living in Oregon with his family. And unfortunately, in the fall of 2010, his father, the patriarch of the family, suddenly passed away. And it was sudden, and the family was one of those families. It was Nate, his mom, and I believe he had a sister. I know he had at least one other sibling. The four of them spent a lot of time together. That was sort of, whenever they were not at work or school, this was a family that spent a lot of time together. And they especially spent a lot of time together outdoors. They were a very outdoorsy family. They liked to fish, they liked to hunt, go hiking. They lived out near Mount Bachelor in Oregon. Mount Bachelor is like this beautiful, I believe there's a ski resort there, but it's picture of huge mountains, snow, pine trees, it's beautiful. And so when this father passed, it sort of immediately created this new, very difficult dynamic. I mean, in addition to there being obviously grief associated and shock associated with his passing, there was also this sudden rupture in the way Nate and his mom and his other siblings sort of lived their day-to-day lives. Suddenly, everything that they did felt different because Dad's not around. And in particular, the family had a cabin out. It was near where they lived. They were sort of just outside of Mount Bachelor. They had a cabin that I believe the father actually built many years ago that was tucked away like up in the foothills of Mount Bachelor. And that small cabin, it was a 2-story cabin, little log cabin. That was a place that the family often went to on the weekend for various trips they would go on. But the dad, he really loved that cabin and he would go there all the time. It was sort of like, you would never be at the cabin unless Dad was there too. So that's like Dad's place. And so the dad passes away. And so you have this really difficult dynamic now, like their whole world has been turned upside down. And also the dad was the primary breadwinner for the family. And so now that he's gone, there wasn't a way to make ends meet for the family. I mean, he did leave behind some possessions that they'd be able to sell, but for the most part, it was suddenly financially really difficult for the family. And so given what I just described to you about the difficult dynamic, that sudden gap in their lives, the decision really by the mother in particular, there was a decision made pretty quickly to sell the cabin because it just felt like too difficult to imagine any of them going to the cabin and actually enjoying being there, given that Dad, is not there anymore. And so this decision is made. Mom's like, we got to sell the cabin. And Nate, the 17-year-old, his experience with his dad was, he went hunting and fishing with his dad all the time. His dad was like this pseudo survivalist type guy, and he would bring his son out there to that cabin pretty much more than anybody else. It was like the son and the dad went there especially a lot. And the son understood that it makes sense to sell the cabin. He didn't disagree with the decision. However, he just sort of felt like he needed to have closure with this cabin more than his mom or his other sibling. He felt like he needed to go there at least one more time, if nothing else, to just feel close to his dad one last time. And so he asked his mom if it would be okay if he went to the cabin by himself, just spent the weekend out there. He'd bring the family dog, whose name was Midnight. He'd go out there for a weekend, and it would just give him a chance to get that closure. And his mom said, that's a great idea. If that's what you want to do, we will wait to list the property. You can go out. It's yours until we say otherwise. Stay out there for as long as you need to. And then when you come back, we'll move forward with selling the property. So Nate, that weekend, this was sometime in, I believe it was December at this point, he loads up his dad's truck that his dad had willed to him, and he brings Midnight the dog along, and Nate, he packed drinks and snacks. He brought his PlayStation along and some DVDs. Remember when DVDs were a thing? A lot of DVDs. And he took off for the cabin up at Mount Bachelor. And to sort of give you some context of where the cabin was in relationship to civilization, it wasn't so much that this cabin was super isolated and really hard to get to. It wasn't. I mean, there was a main road, it wasn't lots of businesses and houses off of the main road, but there was a main road that led to where there was a side street you would take that would cut up through these tall pine trees. And, about a mile into the forest, you'd get to this property. So again, there's a major road that basically brings you there. However, these cabins that were built on Mount Bachelor were spaced really far apart. So there were other cabins, but the closest one was about a mile away. So the neighbors exist, but they're not close enough to really feel like they're actually out there. So once you're at this cabin, it really felt like you were sort of isolated. You're tucked away amongst these huge pine trees, very dense, and there's no neighbors in sight. There's a huge mountain behind you. And so you can go to the main road, go into town, do what you got to do. But as soon as you're in that cabin, it really feels like you're sort of away from the world. And that was actually part of the allure of this cabin. It really felt sort of like peace, tranquil out there. And so Nate, he He drives up to the cabin, he turns off the main road, and he makes his way to this cabin. And as he was making his approach along that last stretch before he actually saw his property, it had snowed, not a lot, but there was enough snow on the ground that he was looking out ahead at the road, and he was just gauging if there were other tire tracks on this road he was on. Because before he got to his house, or his cabin, I should say, the road forked in either direction, basically turning into driveways to the other two properties that, again, are a mile away, just about on either side. So this is a mile driveway. It's not really a driveway. These are additional roads. But he's looking to see if there are tracks that would give away whether or not the other neighbors were around. Because it's the winter, this is the time when folks would come out to their cabin and go snowboarding and skiing up on Mount Bachelor and just, be out here. But he didn't really talk to these people. So he's just looking at the road, and there's no sign that anybody has been out here. It's not a guarantee, but it looks like he's likely the only one out here, at least relative to his two closest neighbors, which again are miles away. For him, that was kind of great. He didn't expect to see his neighbors, but he figured the more isolation he could have, the easier it would be to sort of feel in touch with his dad. So he gets to the cabin along with his loyal dog, Midnight, and he parks the truck, he gets out. In front of this cabin, which is a 2-story cabin, there was a clearing basically to park your cars, like a little cul-de-sac in front. That's where they could park their cars. But beyond the front of the house where there was that clearing, and obviously beyond the road itself, basically every square inch was taken up with these huge pine trees, very dense forest. So he pulls into the cul-de-sac, he gets out, he takes all his stuff out of his truck, snacks, drinks, PlayStation, the DVDs, his bedding, whatever it is, and he goes inside the cabin. And the layout of the cabin is, it was pretty simple. You walked inside and there was a kitchen and there was a living room that were sort of connected to each other. There was no real wall between them. It was sort of an open floor plan. It's a pretty small cabin. So it's like one big room with windows that looked out onto that cul-de-sac from the kitchen. The kitchen was the most farthest forward room on the first floor. And then there was a second floor that you could access via a stairway in the back of the cabin from the living room that would go up to the second deck, which was a master bedroom. There was one other bedroom, a small bedroom, and the master bedroom sat sort of over the kitchen, so towards the front of the cabin. And from the master bedroom on the second floor, there was these sliding glass doors that looked out over, first of all, there was a balcony, a very small balcony just beyond those sliding glass doors. And then beyond that, you basically are looking out at the drive coming up to the property. You're looking out at that clearing, the cul-de-sac where the cars are, and then out to the forest beyond. So he goes in and gets set up, and he sets up his PlayStation in the living room. And over the next actually 48 hours, Nate had a great time. I mean, he actually expected when he got there to be sort of overcome with grief. He's in the place where everything around him reminds him of his now deceased father. But he found that it was actually really great. He did feel close to his dad. He did feel like this was a really good idea. And he also had the comfort of Midnight, his beautiful black lab. And so he has a really nice couple of days. It's snowing like crazy outside, but each of the days he was there, he was able to shovel out or basically put chains on his tires and get out to town. I'm not exactly sure how he did that, but he got out to town in the first couple of days, got food. He even went snowboarding one of the days. But for the most part, he was just hanging out at the cabin. And most of his time was spent down on the first floor in that living room near the TV. And then he would just obviously sleep upstairs in the master bedroom. But on day 3, he was supposed to be there for, I believe, 4 days, or at least 4 days. But on day 3, when he woke up on day 3, the trip started getting really weird. On day 3, he wakes up, and again, he's had 2 very nice days. And he walks into the kitchen, and he looks out the window to the front of the property, to the cul-de-sac and beyond, and he sees that even though it's been snowing over the last few days, it has snowed a lot over the night. It snowed, feet of snow have come down. And, not alarming. This makes sense for this part of the world, this time of the year. But Nate decided, you know what, I just don't have it in me to battle the weather, to battle the elements and try to go into town or try to go snowboarding. I'm just going to spend the whole day inside, hanging out, playing video games, chilling with my dog, just have a sort of lazy day at the cabin. And he wasn't upset about it. This seemed like a great thing. So he has this little morning routine, and at some point, Midnight, who, for the record, had been acting like a normal dog to this point in the entire trip. Also, for context, Midnight was a really well-trained dog. Just was an excellent, excellent dog. Was not erratic, was not crazy, did what it was told to do, very loyal. And at some point, on the morning of the third day or mid-morning, Midnight began acting kind of funny, like Midnight needed to go outside. It seemed to Nate like Midnight needed to go outside to pee. And so he just got up out of his chair in the living room and, went outside with Midnight. Now, Midnight's on a leash. They go outside, it's still snowing, there's tons of snow. And Nate sort of expected that Midnight would not run off, because there's so much snow that she would likely just sort of do her business near the door and come back in. But instead, as soon as they stepped outside, Midnight didn't show any interest in wanting to go to the bathroom. Midnight instead was pulling Nate in the direction of basically towards the road that comes in, basically straight out in front of their cabin. It seemed like she was drawn in that direction. And, the snow is not like 6 feet high. It's, a couple feet of snow. He can walk through it and he's like, okay. And so he lets, Midnight pull him forward past the truck, and he's sort of walking out to where the road is that leads back out to the main road. And it's at that point that Midnight just stops, and she's looking down the road, just staring off into oblivion here. It's broad daylight at this point. And, Nate is like, what's gotten into my dog? There's clearly she's sensed something out here, but he doesn't see any animals out here. The dog has also not reacted like this at all over the past couple of days. And he's come out here many other times with Midnight. And this is just sort of unusual behavior by Midnight. But nonetheless, he's like, come on, just like do your business. Let's go, like, come on. And eventually Midnight would, sort of break her stare, and she would go to the bathroom. But as Nate is getting ready to pull Midnight back with him and bring her back into the cabin, he looks a little ways down the road, which he had been looking at to this point, but not critically or closely. And he sees what looks like footprints in the snow. And remember, it's been snowing quite a bit. And so if there are footprints, it needs to be relatively recent. Otherwise, they'll be covered up by the snowfall. And, right away, Nate's thinking how weird that is. There is the possibility that if there were footprints up here, one, it could totally be an animal, which would not be strange. There could be deer or moose or whatever else is in Oregon. But it also could be one of his neighbors. There were times in the past where some of these people that lived far away would just go for a walk and sometimes cut through the property line of Nate and the others. That wasn't totally unusual. But just sort of given the fact that he had come in a few days earlier and not seen any sign of anybody being at those other houses, the other cabins, and he had spent the whole day at the cabin, never heard or saw anybody, it just seemed weird that there'd be footprints out here. And so with Midnight, he sort of walks a little bit closer, just farther down towards this road to get a better look. And sure enough, there are footprints. And Midnight, as soon as they start walking in that direction, she began pulling him to go closer and closer. It seemed pretty clear that she was engaging before and now with, these footprints and whatever's out here, whatever's made them. And he gets close enough to where he can, again, clearly see there are footprints. And he sees the stride of these footprints is long enough that it could be a person. It could also be an animal. He doesn't really know. It's too deep to see the actual imprint, to see if it's, a boot or a paw print or a hoof or something. But he's just taking it all in, and he's looking at the footprints, and they sort of come out of the tree line. They haven't come up the road. They come out of the tree line and sort of pace around a little bit, sort of on the road that leads in, and then they turn and they appear to go back into the tree line. Not totally unusual, but it registers for Nate that this is a little bit odd. If that's a person, what are they doing out here? And I didn't see him, and I've been up and moving around the kitchen quite a bit, and based on the snowfall out here, there's a pretty good chance that these prints were made in the last 30 minutes, the last hour. These are recent, and I didn't see anybody. That's just weird. But Nate kind of does what I think most of us would do, which is like, there's probably some reasonable explanation for this. I'm not gonna worry about it. So he takes Midnight, who by this point really wants to go investigate these footprints and whatever's made them, but he drags Midnight back. He brings her back in the house, in the cabin. He goes inside, and now at this point, he can't help but feel a little on edge, a little bit like, my privacy's been invaded by someone or something. And so he actually draws the blinds, locks the windows, locks the doors, and he's like, I'm just gonna sort of cave it up for the rest of the day. I'm not gonna think about what's out there. It's probably just animals or whatever. It's no big deal. So he's back in his cabin, and over the course of the afternoon, again, the windows are all drawn, and he's just sort of enjoying video games. He's sort of forgotten about the footprints. Midnight continued to act really strange. Not all day, not the entire afternoon, but periodically it was like something kept spooking her. And she kept running to the various exits of the cabin, whether it was a door or a window, and she would whimper like she really wanted to look or go outside. And Nate, a couple times he let her out to go to the bathroom, and it seemed like each time she'd be drawn to those footprints, but he wouldn't walk over there. He kind of kept her close to the cabin. But it was like all day, Midnight just could not let go of there's something out there. There's something going on that's piquing her interest. And for Nate, who admits that he considered himself a pretty tough guy, who was used to being out in the wild by himself. I mean, his mom didn't care at all. This 17-year-old kid is just, go out into the wilderness in Oregon, be out there as long as you want by yourself. It says something about his competency, at least his perceived competency. But he was pretty spooked. He was starting to feel spooked. He just felt like something weird's going on. But, he began to he continued to tell himself that it's no big deal. So that night, they're back in the cabin. Nate makes sure everything is locked, everything is shut, all the blinds are drawn, and he goes upstairs to the bedroom where he sleeps, the master bedroom that has the sliding glass doors that look out to the short balcony that looks out over the courtyard and down to the road below. And he gets in bed, and Midnight pops up on the bed with him, and they lay down, and they are about to go to sleep when Midnight really gets spooked. Like something's going on for Midnight, like more than the whole day. Something really got her attention. And she bolts downstairs to the first floor. And Nate, it's pitch black in their cabin, or close to it. They're in the middle of the woods in Oregon, very isolated. And he can hear his dog just pacing back and forth and whimpering near the door and pawing at the door. She really wants to go outside. And Nate, at this point, he is admittedly scared, and he doesn't want to go outside. He doesn't want to bring her out to pee. He doesn't want to do anything outside. He wants to stay in the house, right? But he still feels like maybe she does need to pee. And so eventually he gets up and he goes downstairs, and sure enough, Midnight is just so stressed. She wants to go outside. He puts her on a leash. He grabs, his cigarettes and his flashlight. He's like, I'm going to just be tough about this. I'm going to go out there, let her pee, come back in. He goes outside, and it's all dark, snow's falling. He's got his flashlight, he's looking around. He doesn't see anything out there, just snow everywhere, trees, snow's falling. And at midnight, doesn't want to pee. She wants to run off into the forest, and he's like holding her back. And finally, he gave up on having her pee because he just felt like she's not out here to do that. She's out here for whatever thing she's sensed out here. And so Nate's like, enough. Comes in the house, and he's like, you know what? If she needs to pee, she can pee in the house. Like, I'm not doing this. I feel unsafe being out there. I'm not doing it. Back in the house, back in the cabin, they lock the doors, they go back to the bed. And so Nate now, he can't sleep. He's just laying in bed. Midnight is like on all fours on the bed, unable to settle down. And as he's laying there trying to convince himself that, everything's okay, he hears something. And it's coming from the roof. He would describe it as what sounded like hooves walking on his roof. And there is no attic in this cabin. The roof is basically right above him. And he hears these 6 distinct steps across the roof, like someone's pacing, or something, some animal, something is pacing across the roof of this cabin. And Midnight instantly is like looking up and growling. Midnight bolts off the bed. She runs over to the sliding doors that lead out to the balcony. She's trying to go out on the balcony. And Nate, he's thinking, how could anything get up there? There isn't a way to get onto the roof. There is no way. There's unless he had a ladder. And he certainly didn't have a ladder out there that led up onto the roof. This makes no sense to him. And he's also thinking, if somehow there was a tree tall enough, let's just say, that overlooked the roof, that maybe an animal leapt out of onto the roof, wouldn't I have heard the impact of it striking the roof? Similarly, if somebody was climbing up a ladder, I would hear the ladder. There's no noise machine going off. There's no fan going off in his room. It's silent. But all he heard were the 6 steps. And then the steps stopped. There was no other sounds. And so at this point, Midnight is over at the sliding doors that lead out to the balcony. And, she's desperate to go out there. And Nate is sort of having this crisis. It's not that late. He has the whole night ahead of him. He feels very on edge, but he sort of feels like, I can't just pretend this is not happening. Like I'm gonna be up all night regardless, but I need to face whatever this is. It's probably just an animal. And maybe it's an animal that's stuck on the roof and it needs help getting down or something, whatever. But he sort of works himself up that he's like, I need to go out there. I need to go see what's going on. And so he gets up, he puts on his jacket. He has heard no more steps at this point. Midnight's still over at the door. The room is dark. He walks over and he slides open the curtains. And he's looking out and there's no light out there. There's a small light downstairs that kicks on with motion, but it's not on right now. It's just darkness. He can kind of make out with some moonlight, some of the snow coming down, but he knows he's looking out to the front of the property, but it's dark. And then he grabs his flashlight, he's got it in hand, and he's like, all right. He opens up the sliding glass door and he steps out onto the balcony. And the first thing he does, as soon as he's out there, is he whips around and looks up at the roof behind him, because it's basically right in front of him from the balcony, and he shines his light and he's looking at the roof. And there's nothing up there. There's no animal, there's no person, there's nothing. And in fact, he can't even see any footprints, which to him was incredibly relieving. He's thinking, I'm scared, I'm making things up. There was never anything. But Midnight, meanwhile, who's right next to him on the balcony, she's now growling and she's looking out. He can kind of tell she's looking out into the darkness in front of the house. And so Nate takes his flashlight and he goes from looking up on the roof and he begins to wheel the flashlight around. And he begins to scan the tree line, which from his perspective out on this balcony, that the nearest tree line is, 30 or 40 feet away, that tree line. And he's scanning the tree line and Midnight's looking basically straight out. And so he's making his way until he's gonna see whatever she's growling at. And he eventually reaches there's this one big tree that sort of sits almost right in front of the cabin. And it's got this long branch that they call it the sitting tree, because it almost looks like there's a seat on this huge branch that's like 20 feet off the ground. And his flashlight reaches the sitting tree and he stops, because illuminated by his flashlight is this man who's crouched, almost perched on this branch. And he's got these long arms and he's gripping a branch above him. He looks like he's not wearing any clothes, he's barefoot, and his mouth is wide open and he's staring directly at Nate. And Nate, for a second, can't even process what he's seeing, but then he's suddenly so scared, his instinct is to grab Midnight, jump back inside of his house, shut the sliding doors, shut the curtains. And so he's just locked himself inside of his cabin. But as soon as he did that, he's like, oh my God, there's someone out there. I need to know what they're doing. Are they gonna come try to attack me or something? And so it's only been a couple of seconds now. And from now, inside the cabin, the glass doors are shut. He opens up the blinds, does not open the door, he opens the blinds. Now he's got glass windows and he's looking out and he raises his flashlight and he presses it to the glass and he shines it on the sitting tree and there's nobody there now. And he looks all around and there's no one. It's just darkness. It's a dark forest. No one's out there. And so now Nate does not know what to make of this, because he's heard footsteps on the roof. Impossible footsteps. He saw the footsteps yesterday that didn't really make any sense. His dog's been acting funny. This guy, whatever this is, he described it as being so tall, long, skinny, tall, gray-looking figure, clearly is out here, or I'm losing my mind. And so his decision was, I'm just gonna stay awake all night, be vigilant and wait this thing out, and tomorrow morning, as soon as the sun comes up, I'm out of here. And so he did a pass all through his house to ensure all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked, drew all the curtains, and then he and Midnight hopped on the bed in the master bedroom and just prepared to wait, because at this point, he doesn't feel like it's safe to go to sleep. And so he's sitting in bed. Midnight is totally on edge, but she's gone from being angry, like wanting to attack, to now being a little bit scared herself. And she's tucking up against Nate on the bed. And after about 30 minutes, something downstairs gets Midnight's attention. Midnight leaps off the bed, but instead of running down the stairs, she runs to the top of the stairs. And now she's basically looking down to the first floor. Nate's on the bed. He's looking over at Midnight. And then Nate hears a tapping sound on his front door downstairs, almost like someone's tapping the door with their finger over and over again. And then it stops. And then Midnight sprints downstairs. And for a minute, Nate's like, what do I do? I mean, is that guy down there now? I have no idea what to do in this situation, so he just waits. And Midnight, she's pacing around, and eventually she calms down, and she comes back upstairs. There's no more tapping. And so Nate, his heart's racing. He's thinking, like, is this the same guy? What is this thing? Who is this thing? Who is this? A minute later, he hears more tapping, but now it's not coming from the first floor front door. It's coming from the side. He had a bathroom just off the master bedroom, and there's a little sliver of glass that looks into the bathroom. And he can distinctly hear, even though he didn't hear any sounds of someone climbing the exterior of their cabin, which would be required to get to this, something is tapping on the small pane of glass, looking into the window right behind him. Nate's horrified. The tapping goes on for a bit. Midnight at this point is spooked. She's tucked up against him. She's just looking into the bathroom. The tapping stops. Then there's more tapping on the other side of the cabin. And for about an hour or so, this is how it went all around the house. Just periodic tapping, all the different windows, the doors, the walls. There was no sound leading up to the tapping. It would just start somewhere around the cabin. It was absolutely terrifying. And then at a certain point, somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning, he heard the sound of footsteps out on the balcony. And then the tapping began on the glass of the sliding glass doors, 6, 10 feet away from him and Midnight. And all night, for the rest of the night, just sporadic tapping on that door. Until finally, the sun came up and the tapping stopped. And at that point, Nate is desperate to get out of here. He's so scared. But the sun is up now, the blinds are all drawn. He hasn't heard tapping in some time, and he goes over and he opens up the blinds and he looks out onto the balcony, and there's all these hoof prints all over the front balcony. And he steps out onto the balcony and he looks down, and it's an unbelievable sea of hoof prints all around the house. There's a racetrack around the house. He turns, looks onto his roof. There's all sorts of hoof prints on his roof. They are everywhere. And so Nate grabs his dog, grabs his stuff, jumps in his car, speeds home, and could not have been happier that they sold that place within the next month or so, because he was never going to go back. And he has no idea what it was. So that's the story. I think it's called Who Was Knocking? So there you go. What do you think? What do you think of that? That was a pretty good rendition. All righty. Well, unfortunately, the chat is sort of delayed, so I can't really get your live reactions. Let's see. It was Santa and his reindeer. Yeah, probably. Probably. I don't know what to make of stories like that, because I think that in a situation where you're out in the woods by yourself, even if you're like a survivalist or something, I think it'd be easy to work yourself up and get scared. However, how do you make sense of all the hoof prints around the house? I don't know. Pretty good. So on that note, remember we have a cool thing coming out here. Stick around for the big announcement, okay? But I think now's a good time to reference that this graphic novel, while it does not necessarily include that particular story, it does have 9 stories in it. It's an anthology of stories that are sort of along the same lines, beautifully brought to life with illustrations by Andrea Muti, okay? And I want to tell you that actually right now, why don't we do this right now? Throw the graphic up you can still get yourself a signed copy of Where Nightmares Live. If you go to book.ballinstudios.com, you're going to land on this page here at Premier Collectibles and Books A Million. You can get yourself a signed bookplate copy by yours truly. Pretty cool, okay? And actually, if you go to the next graphic here on that same website, book.balloonstudios.com, if you scroll down, those are the other places you can purchase said book, Where Nightmares Live. Those are not of the signed variety. So if you want to do that, you should. It's pretty good. If you like that story, we got 9 more in the same vein. And while we're on the topic of selling things, get yourself a seasonal official Mr. Ballin flannel. There it is. If you go to shopmrballin.com, thanks for putting the sign out there so I remember the URL. Shopmrballin.com, get yourself one of these sweet flannels. 20% off. What a deal. Shopmrballin.com, get yourself a flannel. So, what we're going to do is we have a little bit of time. Don't worry if you're sticking around for the big announcement, it's coming. But first, we're going to do a little Q&A. So why don't you all fire off your questions in the chat? I'll do my best to read them. It kind of flies through. But while you all populate some questions in the chat, I'm going to take a few questions from our Discord server. Shout out to all the members of our Discord server. If you don't know what that is, well, it's pretty cool. We have this server with like over 100,000 people in it. It's free to join. It's like a big internet hangout spot. It's like the town square for the strange, dark, and mysterious. I'm pretty sure there are links in my bio. It's free to join. I think you can probably just Google like Discord Mr. Ballin. It'll bring you to it. But anyways, these are some questions from Discord, and then I'm going to grab some from here as well. First question. If your life was ever turned into a movie, who would you want to play you? You know what's funny? I don't even know why I just thought of this. I haven't read these questions yet. This is off the cuff, so this is not a staged answer. I don't know if you guys are big fans of Daniel Tosh, the comedian, or not. He shares no likeness with me. We are in no way similar. But I think he's hilarious, and he's... he would not, I don't think he'd do a good job representing me, but he'd be really funny. He's like my favorite celebrity. He also notoriously doesn't do like any public appearances. He doesn't interact with anybody. He's like really private. And I think it'd be cool to have Daniel Tosh play me. Are you coming to the UK? From Trill1701. I think eventually, yeah. So this year, unfortunately, we could not swing a live tour, which frankly was crushing. But we will definitely do more live events, not just live streams, but live in-person events. It was really, really cool doing that last year. We went on, actually, real quick, who went to one of the 15 live shows in 2024? That was a good time. Let us know in the chat. Or the one in 2023 in Austin. There was another one we did. But I think that eventually we could go to the UK, for sure. Do some storytelling. I love doing the live stuff. Here's a question. Do you sleepwalk every night? Not every night, but pretty close. There's I believe I have a combination of nightmare syndrome that I've had since before the military. So it's not like I did Town Hall in New York City. Nice. Some folks were at, you were at the one in Charlotte. Very nice. Crystal Capone 2243. Nightmare syndrome is exactly what it sounds like. You literally just have these visceral, awful nightmares. I started having like sleepwalking episodes when I was 18 in college. My first one, I guess now I think the statute of limitations has passed, so I won't get in trouble. But when I was in college, my first semester in college, I think it was that while it was, yeah, I think it was my first semester in college. I was at UMass Amherst. Anybody attend the University of Massachusetts in beautiful Amherst, Mass? UMass Amherst. I was asleep in my dorm in the John Quincy Adams dorm. It's like this huge high-rise dorm. It's like 24 stories. I went to bed and I suddenly woke up, and I have this weird. If you've not sleepwalked, it's hard to put this in perspective. But basically, when you're sleepwalking, you're sort of aware that something's not quite right. Like, you know, you're not quite normal, but you can't help but feel all the fear or anxiety that's associated with whatever dream or experience you're having in your sort of dreaming state. You're sort of really caught between reality and dreams. And so I have this moment where I'm sort of vaguely aware that I'm standing in the hallway of my dorm on the 20th or 19th floor or something. And I also look down at my hand and I notice that it's sort of bloodied, like I punched something. At least that's what it looks like. And I also glance up and I notice that there's there's a fire alarm that's right in front of me on the wall. And there's there's a plastic cover, that's designed to sort of be there so you don't accidentally pull it. You lift it up and pull the fire alarm, and it's been broken. It looks like it's been impacted by something. And I'm sort of putting together that this doesn't feel right. Like maybe I did this. And then I sort of take stock of the fact that the alarm's going off in the dorm. And so I run to the stairwell and there's all these people evacuating. No one's panicked. It's college kids. And we walk down like 19 floors of stairs. And then I go outside and it's raining, and everybody basically congregated in right outside the front doors because it was raining. But I like walked outside and I don't know, I must have been sleepwalking. And I like wandered away from the group and slowly came to realize I was only wearing shorts. And it's like cold, it's raining, I'm just wearing shorts. And I walked to this puddle and I'm like looking at my hand, and I'm standing in this puddle. It's like ankle deep, and I'm like dipping my knuckle in the water for a while until it sort of like dawned on me that I was sort of sleepwalking. And then I ran back to the group and pretended I was acting normally. But I don't have proof of this, but I'm reasonably certain I pulled that fire alarm in my sleepwalking state. But that was in 2018. That was not 2018. Oh my God, that was in 2006. So, but anyhow, do I sleepwalk every night? No, but nightmare syndrome is a thing. You basically have nightmares. And then I have this thing that I believe I have. I've done sleep studies. No one can quite pin it down. It's called non-REM. Oh, what the heck is it called? Disturbance something or other. Basically, when I'm not in REM, I basically stay in deep sleep so long, and then I like have a hard time coming out of it. Anyways, I'm just a mess. So a lot of times I sleepwalk. A lot of times. I slept walk once. It's unreal. From Nickel Nixon 7310. It's weird. A lot of my sleepwalking is me leaping out of my bed and running as fast. I sleep alone because of this, because I'm a horrible sleep partner. Shout out to my wife, Amanda, who puts up with it, or she did for the first decade of our marriage. Now I sleep alone. I run out of the room screaming profanities, usually at the absolute top of my lungs, because I believe someone's going to kill me. And then I sort of like come to, my wife's like, go to bed. Lovingly, she says that. So yeah. All right, I told you guys to put questions in here, and I've done a horror. What happened to your neck? From Chickswin. Chicks WNN. What happened to your neck? Here, let's do this. And I'm not insulting you, Chickswin, but I've tried so hard to cover this. Would someone, or would you all like to put in the comments what's wrong with my neck? Let's see how many people have taken the many times I've tried to address it. Basically, I do an exercise in the gym that cuts it, and I keep doing the exercise because you got to keep going. You got to stay disciplined. And I cut my collarbone every single time. Kiara, Keara, K.E.A.R.A. What's my go-to coffee order? Honestly, I just do black, venti, no ice, but iced coffee from Starbucks. So iced, black, no ice from Starbucks. And you know what I actually do? I buy them sort of in bulk. I get 6 coffees like that, and I put them in my fridge. And then every day, I get a nice, fresh, iced black coffee. All right, let's see. A couple more questions. We got plenty of time. Kathleen Neese, 1217. What's your favorite horror movie? So me and my children, I don't know if this is age appropriate or not for my kids, but we watched Signs recently by Mel Gibson. That scared the heck out of me when I was a kid. Honestly, it was just that scene with the alien walking past the the alleyway at the kid's birthday party. Horrifying. And also Joaquin Phoenix is such a good actor. It's just, I'll watch him in anything. So we watched that. That's one of my favorites. And we watched Paranormal Activity 1 and Paranormal Activity 2. Those are great films too. I think the first one was better though, because it sort of set the genre in motion, sort of. Although that really set the genre. I think Blair Witch Project did the found footage thing first. But I'd say Signs. I don't know if it counts as horror, but I'd say Signs. That's probably it. Navy Aviator just said, I'd be willing to argue that by the 6th cup of coffee I've put in the fridge that it's no longer fresh. I disagree because I drink too much coffee and I fly through them. So it's like within a couple of days, I'm hitting number 6. Grant Kelly 7490, are you sober? I am. I am sober as of May 5th, 2024. I've always struggled with substance abuse, namely alcohol. But the way I would struggle with it is I would convince myself I had no issues with it and have periods of my life where I would ruthlessly binge drink by myself, often at night. I would like hide. My go-to actually became, well, I'm not advocating for this in the least, but it was like those seltzers, those hard seltzers, because they didn't give me a hangover and I could drink them really fast. And I would like sneak into my garage at night and like drink 6 or 8 or 10 as fast as I could and then like go to bed. I don't even know why I did that, but it became like I had to do it. And then my wife would catch me and then I would tell her, oh my God, I'll never do it again. And I would do it again. And I genuinely, it wasn't like I'm a bad person. I just couldn't not do it. I would go through months. At one point I did a whole year where I didn't touch anything, but I would always just fall back into it because I'd have like a good run in my life. I'd be like hitting all my responsibilities and like just being like good in every way that I deemed good. And I'm gonna reward myself. I'm gonna get drunk by myself in my garage when all the kids and my wife is asleep. It's a bad setup. Doesn't really, oh man, it was awful. It got so bad that in May of 2024, I did sort of feel like if I didn't clean up my act, one, the health issues for me would be pretty real. Also, trivia, if you look at some of the older videos of mine on YouTube, I gotta say, I'm hungover in a lot of those videos. So it was just taking over my life. But I felt like it was gonna ruin my marriage to Amanda. You know, we got married in 2011. We got 3 kids together, but you know, it was like 6 times or something that I got so bad, and then she caught me after I promised I wouldn't do it again. It's that cycle of lying. Even though my intentions were good, the lying is just, it's tough on a marriage when it feels like you don't have trust. Even though I really believe that addiction is like a disease, and at a certain point, I wasn't choosing to harm my wife. I was just doing the thing I was addicted to, which was like binge drinking alcohol more than anything else. So I have stopped. I got to be honest. I did do AA for a time. I did it in Texas for a little while. I did it in Jersey as well. And then I did it. And so I'm laughing because I probably should have kept it up, but I ended up not doing it anymore. I don't know. I didn't really work great for me. I felt like I just felt ready to stop, I suppose. And also it was just eating up a lot of my time to go to the meetings. I know that sounds horrible, but in the spirit of transparency, that's sort of the reality. But now, like, I look at this platform I have as like a place where I'm being held accountable every day, because I made it a thing that I'm sober. And I don't judge in the least anybody who's not sober, but I'll tell you, if you have an issue, and you probably know you do, sobriety, it sucks at first, but you quickly realize that the things that you would, when you're in the middle of abusing substances, you view things like sitting on the couch and watching a show like with your kids, it would be kind of boring. I hate to say that, but it's true. But when you remove the substances and it's out of your system, you actually, the way you react to things totally changes. You start getting like dopamine rushes from things that are ordinary and like good. Like hanging with your kids suddenly is honest to God enjoyable, and like you want to do it, you want to be there, you want to be present. It applies to everything. Like it reshuffles the way you are made happy. And then once you're there, it's easy to maintain it. It's just hard to get there, of course. So So shout out to those struggling with that. I know it's hard. It took me years and years and years. I think this is the final time. I believe it is. So, all right, let's see. We have a few minutes left. I'll do one more question. I'll take one from Discord, so you can stop pummeling the chat with questions. Number 14 was, it's after all the stories you've researched over the years, have they had any effect on your beliefs? I wish I knew who asked that question. So if you asked that question, it's a great question. The truth is, I've always been really open and interested in the strange, dark, and mysterious. This channel certainly did not come to be because I was like, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel. It was a byproduct of already being really genuinely interested in this genre. I find the world's mysteries to be fascinating, like especially like kind of scary stuff. But so the reason I say that is I think I was more tempted to believe things at the beginning of doing Mr. Ballin. Like this started really in earnest in 2020. Now, as a result of having researched and read through and just read so much and researched so much, you realize that there really aren't a huge number of like highly credible, not paranormal, but like weird happenings. There definitely are those that have happened. We tell as many as we can on the channel and on the podcast, but there's so many stories that are fabricated online, maybe with good intentions, maybe with not. And I think that having a keen eye for not wanting to believe. Now, with that said, there's like a gray area, and we'll often sort of live in this gray area, which is you get somebody's point of view. Like you speak to somebody like Nate, that's not really his name, but when I spoke to him, like that was his perspective. That's what he saw. That's what he experienced. Whether or not it happened exactly the way he recalls, or whether or not my rendition holds up to what he actually saw, is secondary to the fact that in his life, he had an experience that was like that. That's what it was. It could have been something that was totally benign, but we don't have that information. All we have is his testimony. And so if you take it as a story and you take it as that's what he thinks he saw and felt and witnessed, then that's what it is, and it's great. But if you start getting into like, what do I believe in, like in terms of paranormal or in terms of this, I think I'm much more skeptical as a result of all the research, but still very open-minded. There was a channel that I used to love that's called, and they actually might still be around. I think they changed a lot, but it's called Dark 5, the number 5. There's no audio. It's just this creator would find the craziest like world mysteries. You should still check them out. I hope they're still on there. And they just would have a couple of sentences they would put on the screen. They'd like play the video. The video is like 3 minutes long. And it would be like a slideshow of these fascinating images, these horrifying images with like little bullets that sort of gave context to the pictures. And I would go down these crazy rabbit holes, and I thought they were so cool. I'll say Dark 5, and I'm just promoting them because I think they're great. They will talk about stuff that is, in my mind, a lot of it's pretty credible. So if there was a place that you wanted to go and I'm not giving an endorsement to all their content, but a lot of the stuff they cover on Dark 5, it's like, look into it yourself. There's some validity to it. Rob Gavigan, yeah, I love that guy. He was one of my favorite channels. Mr. Nightmare, love Mr. Nightmare. Anyhow, okay, so here we go. We're gonna go to the big announcement that you've all patiently waited for. So, again, this is shout out to Antonio, who came up with this brilliant plan here. So what we're gonna do is over the next 2 weeks, this is gonna be starting tomorrow. And for those that don't know, if you just joined late, I said there was gonna be a game that we're gonna announce here that's gonna play out over the next 2 weeks. Here's the game. We are going to be hiding copies of the new graphic novel, Where Nightmares Live, that will have a special customized inscription and signature from me on the book. You'll definitely know if you found one of the hidden books. We're gonna hide them all over the country. We're gonna hide one a day starting tomorrow. So on Halloween, that's the first book that's gonna get hidden. And the way it's gonna go is over the next 2 weeks, every day at 2 p.m. Eastern, give or take, we're going to drop a clue as to where that day's book has been hidden. They are not all going to be hid in bookstores. Some will, but some will be hid in, appropriate, spooky places. Nothing that's unsafe. Don't worry, kids. I think it's safe to say kids can take part in this. This will not be dangerous, other than maybe you need to go into some spooky graveyard or something. But each day, keep in mind, we only will know if you found it if you document it. So we're basically hoping that with each person who finds a book, we did this the last couple of days we were doing this, and people did respond this way. Take a picture of the inscription, because it's a unique inscription inside the book. Also, the book is yours to take, of course. You don't have to do anything. It's yours to take. Take a picture. You don't got to be in the picture. If you want to take a video, if you want to be in, great. Send it to me or tag me, but in some way, get it to the Mr. Ballin Instagram account. We are on the lookout for these videos and pictures, and then I will interact with you, congratulate you, and make you feel great about your big find, talk to you a little bit, and we'll put you on social media. So it's going to be a scavenger hunt every day for the next 2 weeks, starting tomorrow. Is a clue coming out today, though?
No, announcing it today. Clue tomorrow.
The first clue is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then every subsequent day, 2 p.m. Eastern, about that day's hidden book. When the clue goes out at 2, the book will already be in place. So you just sit there, and if you're lucky enough that the clue tells you that something's near you, go out and get it. It's going to be worth it. I wish you happy hunting. Again, before we close this thing down, Where Nightmares Live, there are still signed copies. I'm going to throw that graphic back up on the screen here. At Premier Collectibles and Books A Million, you can go to book.ballinstudios.com. It'll bring you there. There's the other places you can get the book. Those are not signed copies, though. We also have this nifty flannel. If you want to go back to me here, the yellow Mr. Ballin flannel. There you go. Boom, 20% off. Go to shopmrballin.com. This thing's sweet. 20% off. Miss anything? I think that's it. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you guys sticking around. That's going to do it. Happy Balloween. Happy Halloween. Again, clues, 2 p.m. Eastern, on my social media, Instagram. Tomorrow is the first clue at 2. Tomorrow is the first hidden book. That's going to do it. Thank you all so much. Happy Halloween.